What's going on, guys? We've got a bit of a different video for you today. So in my last Draft League video, I said I'd be uploading in probably around 2 weeks, and it's been 2 weeks, so I wanted to do something. And also, some people wanted me to talk about playoff predictions. So yeah, that's what we're doing today. It's going to be a bit of a longer video, and it's unscripted. So yeah, the reason I'm not playing yet is there was 1 week allotted for the play-in tournament. And then week 1 of the playoffs and cup is going on right now, but I ended up as a top 4 seed for the cup, so I don't have to play until next week. So, and getting into that, so here's the standings at the end of the season. Yuliko ended up losing week 10. Pretty shocking, actually. Ended up losing to Maddie, who has kind of had a great season. So shout out to him. So yeah, no undefeated teams this season. 2 teams at 9-1 though. And yeah, we had 3 teams tie for 12th place, so there was a little play-in tournament. Cam and Dustin played first, and the winner of that got to play AJ. So AJ ended up winning and Cam beat Dustin in a truly tragic match, at least for Dustin. He had a really unlucky season. I feel kind of bad about it. But yeah, so that's your 12 for the playoffs, and then everybody else is in the cup. I want to kind of explain how the playoff seeding works because we're not doing a normal way this season. We're doing how some other draft leagues do it, but no sport does this. So if you watch sports, like, this is totally different. So using the 12 playoff teams as an example, 1 through 4 get a bye. So Yuliko, Damage, Maddie, and Shell Shock don't have to play for the first week. Then Satan gets to pick who he wants to play out of J-Dog, Nave, Mikey, and AJ. After he picks, Cyber picks from those 3. Then Manly Guy picks. Then Robbie gets whoever's left. And then after all of those matches are picked, the top 4 get to pick who they want to play into them. Satan is playing Mikey. Cyber is playing AJ. Manly Guy is playing Nave. And J-Dog is playing Robbie. Now Yuliko gets to decide if he wants to play the winner of any of those matches. Not any of those matches, but he gets to pick if he wants the winner of Satan versus Mikey, or the winner of Cyber versus AJ, or the winner, and so on. So it's a little complex, but once it's all decided, the bracket is just what it is. It's already been decided. So, and the same process happened for the cup. So let's go ahead and look at the cup first. So here's the bracket. And generally speaking, I think there's a few favorites here. Obviously, Cam and Dustin were very close to making the playoffs, so they're very strong contenders. And I'm going to throw myself in there. I think I'm definitely a contender to win the cup. And then the other 2 teams that I think are pretty plausible are T-Zim and Pick 60. The other teams, it would really take catching fire for them to win, in my opinion. I think Mao could do it, assuming he's able to beat me. I think his team has the capacity to really turn it up, and if he kind of locks in, it's totally doable. But yeah, really to me, it's those 5. It's the 4 players that got a bye, and Pick 60 also gets to be in this conversation because his team's really good and he's a good player. So yeah, obviously I'm kind of leaning towards saying that I'm going to win it. Not biased at all, but I think I can do it. I don't think I have the best team here, I'll say that. I think as far as actual team composition, my team is probably like the 4th or 5th best, if I'm being real. It can be pretty tough to deal with if I get all my conditions up, but really to me the best built team in the cup is Dustin. I think other than myself, the favorites have to be Dustin and Cam, because Cam's got a really well-built team too. Like I said, I'm going to be favoring myself just because that's the way I think about Pokemon is, well, and that's the way I think about competition in general, is like if I'm not, if I don't believe that I'm going to win, like why am I even playing? So yeah, let's look at the head-to-heads for the cup. So you got Praspine and King of Lies. So King of Lies only won 1 set this season, and I don't want to call it like a fluke. He played to his win condition, but it took some severe bad luck on his opponent's part for that to happen. Praspian, on the other hand, historically, pretty solid player. Really scary team. He's got the Fluttermane, the Chi-Yu. Superior also pairs nicely with those two. And then you've got kind of a defensive core with Dondozo, Staraptor, and Persian. All some really bulky. Well, Staraptor's not that bulky, but Intimidate kind of is a defensive tool. And then, yeah, I can just pop off for huge damage if you need it to. So, yeah, I think Praspian's probably got this. King of Lies' team doesn't really threaten him that much. I guess Jirachi, you could maybe put something together for Jirachi to be really scary, but it just matches up too badly into Dondozo and obviously Chi-Yu. And Pardos and Valiant are both hurt by Intimidate. So yeah, I'm going to pick Praspian here. As much as he tends to kind of go easy, I guess I'd say, during the regular season, he definitely has the capacity to be a threat. I mean, we've seen it in the past. He's had some really good seasons, so going to pick Praspian there. As far as the second matchup, Mao and Wiki, this one's kind of hard to predict because they ended up with the same record, right? They're both 2-8. Yep. I think in terms of performance and team, Mao looks better. Mao just kind of had some tough losses throughout the season, and I think lost weeks 8, 9, and 10 in game 3s. Of course, the last one being to me. And they were all against like pretty good players. So, and then on the other hand, Wiki like started off the season pretty strong, but I just think his team is too. I don't even want to call it predictable, but it's like he's one of those players that he's willing to sacrifice some, I guess, viability for the bit. I'm going to reference the bit multiple times, especially in the Cup. Wiki's one of those players that, regardless of if he wins or loses, he's going to do the bit. Sometimes the bit is strong. Like last season, he had the Snow team with Articuno, and it worked out. Other times, the bit is a little harder to kind of make work, and I think that is this season with the whole Parish Trap team. Whereas Mao, solid player, really pretty normal team with the sand stuff. Definitely some weaknesses to that team, but overall, very much more aimed at just winning games. All right, in our next matchup, we've got another player that really loves the bit, that being Richer. And Richer's going up against Fury, who, in terms of this season, has been the total opposite. Made a ton of swaps for very strong Mons to try and push the season forward a little bit. Didn't end up making the playoffs, despite a very lucky victory early in the season. I'm sorry, I'm still salty about that, so forgive me. But no, I mean, I think Fury's got it. Richer is, as we discussed, he's one of those players that really doesn't care if he wins. He just wants to use offensive Smeargle, and he's going to try to make it work. So yeah, which is so... I don't want to call it unfortunate, because obviously if you're having fun playing, you're having fun playing. But, I mean, we've seen Richer have a really strong season before. His first season, he won like 5 or 6 games. It might have been more. It might have been 6 or 7. And, like, his team was so good, it caused a rule change in terms of drafting. So, ever since then, he's just kind of played to do something that he thinks is funny or cool. And that's fine, you know. There's room for that in the league. But I would like to see him win, and I'm rooting for him. But unfortunately, I don't think his team is built for that. Next, we got Pixixie versus Trip. We lost to Trip earlier this season, so obviously, you know, not a bad player by any means. But he... Now, I'm sorry, I'm going to stop talking about the bit soon, but especially in the early rounds of the Cup, the bit is very relevant. Trip is one of those players that he's not quite as far into the bit as other people, because he built like a real team. It's, you know, Garchomp, Corviknight stuff. But in terms of his team building, he definitely likes the bit. He'll do something wacky that he thinks is kind of a quirky counterplay, and if he loses because of that, that's just kind of how it goes. Pixixie, of all the players in the first round, in my opinion, is least susceptible to the bit. I think he's got a very strong team. Mew, Roaring Moon, Magnezone, Gardevoir. Who else is there? It used to be a Psy-Spam team, but Indeedee is gone. We've got Gyarados. That's the big one I was forgetting. And Blaziken also here doing some stuff. So I think Pick 60 is a really good player. Won the Cup before. Pretty good team. Unfortunately, didn't do that well in the regular season, but they were definitely figuring it out as the season went on. So I'm gonna take Pick 60 there. And yeah, I think that means I picked every higher seed to win in the first round. I did. So moving on to the second round, we'll have Cam versus Pressby. And they played earlier this season, and Cam won. And I think overall he's got a pretty good matchup. Praspian's team is mostly scary because of how quick it is. You can run like Scarf Chi-Yu and Booster Speed Flutter, and they're just going to outspeed most things. Even like Scarf Mons, Flutter's going to outspeed all those. But Cam has Prankster Tailwind in the form of Murkrow, and also like Bullet Punch Sizzler to kind of threaten the Flutter main. So I think he's not that worried about the speed. The damage is obviously a concern, but I think he's got it. Feraligatr matches up super good into the team other than Dondozo. I think Dondozo is kind of going to be the win condition for Praspian, because Cam has the least amount of ways of dealing with it, but he did add Hydrapple. I don't remember if he added Hydrapple before or after playing Praspian. Okay, he definitely had Hydrapple before playing Praspian. He didn't use him the first time, but also Zebstrika is really a good way of dealing with Dondozo. So he's got options to deal with Dondozo. And yeah, again, I'm pretty biased towards Cam. He's a good friend of mine. We help prep all the time. So yeah, take all my opinions with a grain of salt, but I think he's going to beat Praspian, and that doesn't even require any bias. So we were going to have a probable Week 10 rematch between myself and Mao. So I'll be playing him twice in a row if he wins. And I'm a little worried because I think he's going to make some prep adjustments that are going to make my life a lot harder. I apologize for being vague. I don't want to talk too in depth about any matchups of mine in particular, just because like I don't want to talk about the counterplay that I have in mind when this video is going up before I play these people. So bear that in mind. But I think I'm still probably going to win. Diance's really strong against the team minus Araquanid. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of trying to deal with one threat in order to take out another. For both of us, I think that applies. But yeah, I'm going to take myself there. Next we'll have Fury versus Dustin. I haven't talked too much about Dustin yet, but truthfully, I think he's got the strongest team in the Cup. It's a crazy type core. Hold on, let me pull it up so you guys can see. So Manaphy, Arcanine, Iron Leaves as your Fire, Water, Grass, and then Florges to cover the Terra Dragon. I think that as a quartet of offensive Pokemon is incredibly hard to deal with. I played against Dustin and I lost. I helped Cam prep for Dustin and he barely escaped with a win. So it's a hard core to deal with. And then not to mention on top of that, you've got all these little guys, Fungus, Yanma, Sneasel, Furret, that are just going to pester you. They're going to put you to sleep. They're going to fake you out. They're going to redirect your attacks. And it's going to be very annoying. I think the addition of Raikou over Regieleki was probably a good one. You know, you get some more bulk, you get some more coverage, some more utility, but he never did this, by the way, so I don't know if he just didn't realize it was an option or thought it was too much of like a workaround. Electric Terrain Regieleki would have let him hit really, really hard. So like say you run Regieleki with Iron Leaves with like Electric Terrain and Electro Web, you can have a booster attack Life Orb Iron Leaves that's getting speed support from the Electro Web. He didn't use it. I think it was very scary. I was afraid of it in prep. But he didn't end up using it against anybody as far as I remember. Maybe he did. But I watched pretty much every match. But anyway, you've got Raikou now. A little more of a supportive option, and I That's probably a good thing. And then Fury, I didn't really talk too much about Fury's team, the changes, but they've got Heatran now, and Enamorus and Landorus. There they go. A couple fighting types. Crawdon's still on the roster. I think Dustin's got it. Really, you just have to find a way to deal with Heatran, and then I think everything else is not bad here. Although, Fury's got some options, though. I mean, Landorus, Enamorus, Heatran, that's a good trio. There's just so much fighting type. Because Enamorus, assuming you're running physical, is going to be running superpower. Gallade's a fighting type. Hitmontop's a fighting type. So I think with a good Terra, Iron Leaves could be a real threat here. You just have to make sure you don't die to Heatran. Manaphy, obviously super good into Heatran and Landorus. So yeah, I'm going to take Dustin. I think Dustin's got the better team, and Dustin's had the stronger performance this season. And then our last round 2 matchup of the Cup is definitely the hardest one to pick. Is very likely going to be Pick6y versus Teasem. Two guys that kind of struggled throughout the season, but towards the end both really figured it out, especially Teasem. He started running Nasty Plot Pecharunt, which I just think is super good. And yeah, super good defensive team here. And then you've got Moltres and Empoleon to do some damage. The issue is you really don't have that much physical attack. Empoleon's a special attacker. Moltres is a special attacker. Pecharunt prefers special attack, in my opinion. And then really your only physical options are Scrafty and Haxorus. And I guess Golurk, if you don't mind having a pretty crappy Pokemon otherwise. Sorry, Golurk. I like Golurk, actually, as a Pokemon, but it's not very good, unfortunately. But yeah, you're lacking some physical attack on this squad, but I mean, you're so bulky. You get screens, you get Pecharunt, maybe you get a Tailwind or some Intimidates down. Obviously, Deoxys is super bulky, so very difficult team to deal with. Pick6y might have the squad to do it, though. If I can, I always struggle to find people on the bottom. It's always nice when you're the first pick and you can just click right there. All right. Roaring Moon could be pretty good into Pecharunt. Mew could be pretty good into Pecharunt. Oh yeah, that sucks for Teasem. Multiple Pokemon that match up well into Pecharunt. Of course, Grimmsnarl does really well defensively into those two, so you could do some switching stuff, but I just don't know how Teasem's going to do enough damage. Magnezone could pop off here under the right circumstances. So yeah, I think they're pretty even as far as performance goes this season. But I think Pick6y has the slightly better team. Although, I love to be proven wrong. I tend to root for Teasem. That's my guy. I mean, most of the people in the league are, you know, I'm friends with them. So I really don't root against people that much. I'm kind of rooting for good sets to be played. Like, there's definitely a hierarchy of people I root for, but I don't want to get into it. It's basically me, and then like Cam, and then everybody else is fairly even. You know, I'm not going to say they're entirely even because that's not true, but anyway, let's get into semifinals. If my predictions play out, it'll be myself versus Cam, which is in some ways nice and in some ways unfortunate. You know, I'd like us to avoid playing at all, or at the very least play for the cup, so one of us is guaranteed to win. But at the same time, I'm kind of excited for this. I think it'd be a good match. Overall, let me look at Cam's team really quick. Again, I don't want to talk about like, oh, this is how I can win here, but yeah, I think I've got some options. I think I can limit the big offensive threats here pretty well, and outside of a couple Pokemon, I don't see that many threats to Diancie that aren't something I can deal with. You know, I'm just gonna come out and say it. I mean, Feraligatr is the big threat here. So you've got to find a way to deal with that without using Intimidate, because Okidogi, I guess in a lot of cases you'll take that trade. You know, you'd rather Okidogi be at +1 than Feraligatr be at neutral. But I don't know. It's definitely more of a trade-off in that scenario, whereas if you can limit physical attackers in some other way, you're going to be all right. So yeah, I'm going to pick myself. Although, just like with the Tease Him and Pick 60 match, I won't be too upset about losing. You never like to lose, but that means Cam's guaranteed Cup Championship. So the other match would be Dustin versus Pick 60. And this is a really interesting one. Florges would have to put in a really big performance because other than Florges, I think Roaring Moon just kind of runs over this team. Now, Manaphy does get Dazzling Gleam, so maybe that's not true. And Manaphy's super bulky and stuff, but I think Roaring Moon, let me look at this team. Roaring Moon, if it can get support from other Pokemon, Magnezone and Gyarados should be pretty big here. Mew is so difficult to kind of predict how it's going to be used and what it's going to be good at, but it can be pretty good at anything. But really, Dustin's team, I don't know. It's really strong. Iron Leaves does pretty well here. Especially if you run like Sacred Sword. It's gonna do just fine. Especially because Grass and Psychic, you get walled by Roaring Moon and Magnezone, but you just throw on Sacred Sword and then you're fine. And then obviously Florges should be really good into Manaphy, at least defensively. Really good into Roaring Moon. It really only has to worry about Magnezone. I think Gyarados will be good here. You can intimidate Iron Leaves. That's going to be big. And Arcanine should be no problem for it. I don't know, maybe, because that's a pretty volatile one. If Arcanine's able to kill it with Rock Move, it's going to be a big deal. But yeah, this one, I don't know. It's pretty volatile. I think I have to lean Dustin just because I think his team is so strong. Which means that Cup Finals would be myself and Dustin. And shocker, I'm going to pick myself to win. But I'm not that confident about it, to be honest with you. Dustin, like I said, he already beat me, and his team is really cracked. So, no promises there, but I'm always going to pick myself. I can certainly come up with some ways to deal with his stuff. The issue I had the first time around was trying to find a good Terra for Diancie. I ended up going with Water with a Rindo Berry, which worked out just all right. I kind of underestimated Iron Leaves, I think. But yeah, you can't really do any of the Fire, Water, Grass types because they all cover each other. And then you can't do Dragon because of Florges. So I'm going to have to figure something out, assuming I even get that far, But yeah, I guess I'll pick myself to win the Cup. And if not me, I really like Dustin or Cam. All right, time to look at the playoffs. This one is pretty hard. Definitely harder than the Cup because there's a lot less kind of clear-cut favorites in my mind. A lot of matchups can go really either way. But in my mind, there are 3 favorites to win the championship. Those being Yuliko, Damage, and Shell Shock, 3 of the top 4 teams. I didn't leave off Maddie for any particular reason. I just think Shell Shock... It's less of I'm leaving Maddie out and more of I'm including Shell Shock in that elite top group. Just because I think his team, in terms of built, in terms of how it's built, is probably the best team in the league. But you kind of have to weigh 2 things when you're looking at stuff like this. You have to weigh player matchup and team matchup. So Shell Shock, obviously a super good player, I would say that during any given season, he is, a top 8 player, top 7 player range. But he's top 3 this season because he built such a good team. Whereas Yuliko, Damage, and most of the time J-Dog and Cyber are always going to be top 5-ish, even if they don't draft the best team, just because they are the best players. And I don't want to make it seem like I'm downplaying Shell Shock. Obviously super good. But I think, especially considering he didn't make playoffs last year, it's not unfair to say that on a regular basis, Damage, Cyber, J-Dog, and Yuliko are consistently better than Shell Shock, at least as far as every other season. But yeah, that brings me back to what I was just saying, where Shellshock drafted such a good team, and he's playing so well right now that he's clearly in the championship conversation above players like J-Dog and even Cyber, in my opinion, right now. Now, that kind of contrasts with Yuliko and Damage, who, in my opinion, do not have that strong of teams. Urshifu and Hoopa, respectively, both incredibly strong Pokemon, but like they don't have any crazy strong partners. Like the teams are just kind of built around type balance for the most part. And they still end up going 9-1. Yuliko only lost to Maddie, and Damage only lost to J-Dog. So 2 other players that are in like the top 6. I think J-Dog ended up finishing 9th actually this season, but most of the time he's like top 5. So basically I just wanted to go on that little spiel before I start talking about head-to-heads, because it's going to be a lot harder than the Cup to predict who's going to win. So I have to use both historically who's the better player and also currently who has the better team matchup-wise. I'm going to be weighing both. It's going to be very hard. So anyway, let's start with Satan and Mikey, 2 rookies. By the way, I wanted to shout this out at the beginning, and I forgot to. 4 rookies made the playoffs this season. Satan, Mikey, Manly Guy, and Nave. So shout-outs to all of them. Obviously, I would have liked to make playoffs, but it's still super cool that we've got people joining the league that are adding to the competition. The league has gotten so strong, and I just think that's super cool. So anyway, looking at this matchup, Mikey. Now, I can't say this with absolute confidence because obviously he made the playoffs, but I think Mikey plays for the bit. Because look, his whole team is all Kanto Pokemon. Which, by the way, remarkable accomplishment, making the playoffs with all Kanto Pokemon, because Dragonite, obviously really good. Clefairy, super good. I think Blastoise is good. But other than that, you've got some Pokemon that kind of rely on certain team archetypes that they do not have access to here that are thriving. So, super cool. But you're going up against Ogerpon and Sandy Shocks and Illumise. Other than that, team is pretty tame. Crocodile's good. You've got a fast fake out taunt in Sneasel. Miss Magus is pretty good, levitate stuff. But really, you're looking at Ogerpon, Sandy Shocks, Illumise. And I just think they do too well into Mikey's team. Dragonite has some defensive matchups here that it could work with. I mean, it doesn't take super effective damage from anything on Satan's team, so that's a big plus. But yeah, it's really going to depend on how well Blastoise and Clefairy can hang around, because if they can stick around a long time, Dragonite's going to be able to put in work. So it's very plausible that Mikey wins this, but I think I have to take Satan purely because, I mean, it's power creep. Like, it's so hard to keep up with these Pokemon with Kanto Pokemon. And also, based on what we've seen this season, as far as records, Satan seems like the better player. So yeah, I'm going to lean that way for that reason. Now we've got Cyber and AJ. Cyber, historically, a very, very strong player, so automatically I'm leaning that way. But let's look at the teams. Oh, yeah. So I know both of these teams. I played Cyber this season and lost. He's got this. Rillaboom, Sneasler, Moltres, which is just disgusting. No disrespect to AJ, because he's obviously really good. We've played a number of times, and they've all been really scary. But he's kind of like struggled with identity this season, made a lot of swaps throughout the season, barely squeaked into the playoffs, which, to his credit, I mean, he had a ridiculous schedule. His losses were Shellshock, Damage, Robbie, Satan, and Yuliko. So basically, the top 3 players in the league, Robbie, who's also a very solid playoff team, Satan, who's a very solid playoff team. Okay, so, and his wins were Mao, Mikey, Tizim, Dustin, and Trip, winning the last 2 to make playoffs. So, yeah, some decent wins. But really, the losses were just really hard. So even with all that said, I think you have to lean Cyber. His team is built so well. Historically, he's one of the best players in SBL. And I think even just on a matchup basis, he does well. Pachirisu should like lock up Thundurus, in theory. And other than Gliscor, there's not that much to deal with Pachirisu. I guess he's got a lot of fast taunt options, but I think Cyber's going to be able to play through this quite easily. His team defensively matches up quite well into AJ's. Moltres might struggle, actually. It doesn't do that well into this team. Pretty bad into Terrakion. Bad into Tinkaton. Shouldn't be very good into Weavile, so maybe that's AJ's kind of in. But even without Moltres going off like it normally would, you're going to have Rillaboom, Sneasler, Pachirisu, all pretty good here. So yeah, I'm going to lean Cyber there. All right, our next matchup is Manly Guy and Knave. Another rookie versus rookie matchup. Manly Guy's got this team, right? The Entei Keldeo. Kind of a weird team, honestly, and I think the same goes for Knave. Yeah, both of them kind of like typically when you think of a balanced team, you think of a big offensive bulky threat and then a bunch of pieces supporting it, and I don't think either of these teams fit that because they don't have the bulky threat in the same way that like you think of Archaludon, Annihilate, Moltres, those types of Pokemon, and this season Hoopa, that you kind of build your squad around. But like these teams have all the supporting pieces, but they don't have the big offensive piece. I guess King Gambit kind of qualifies, but I don't know. I think King Gambit isn't quite at that level, especially not in draft. I mean, it's really good in VGC, but it hasn't shown to be that kind of Pokemon in draft. So yeah, I guess I just spent entirely too long kind of pooping on these teams when really they're very good. They just kind of are odd to me because they don't have any major like leading blow you up threat. You kind of just have to respect everything and hope that you play better. So anyway, as far as matchup, because player wise, I can't really say who's better. I think Knave in the last 7 weeks of the season probably played better. Man, that's crazy. There was a 5-set win streak in here. Cyber, Maddie. Whoa, hold on. Cyber, Maddie, J-Dog. Tease him with Trip in the middle of all that. And then you beat Fury on week 10. So your losses were Satan, Cam, scroll up, and Robbie, and the forfeit to Mikey. So actually, right, I forgot about the forfeit loss. Truthfully, I think I'm going to lean Knave because of how strong they've played in the second half of the season. Like, some of these wins are crazy. Beat both of the brothers and Maddie, who's a top 3 team by record. Lost a game 3 to Satan, another top 5 or 6 team. And you beat Robbie. Or no, you lost to Robbie. So yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. I will say matchup-wise, Keldeo seems really good into this team. But Gudra should do pretty good into Keldeo. Sylveon should be pretty good into Keldeo. Vikavolt, obviously. Chestnut. So Knave has options. So I'm going to pick Knave to win. And then the last round 1 matchup is, just like in the Cup, this is like the most exciting one by far to me. Robbie and J-Dog, both led by a nasty Dragon and Ice type. J-Dog has kind of a weird team. It's Kyurem, Landorus, Azumarill is kind of the big core, and then you've got Magmortar and Cobalion as kind of defensive options. Grafaiai. How many times has J-Dog used Grafaiai? So this is the second season in a row that J-Dog has used Grafaiai. Huh. Interesting. Okay. And then Robbie has Baxcalibur, Kilowattrel, Primarina, Salazzle, Iron Treads, Mabostiff, and Mesprit as kind of the big notable Pokemon. This one's really interesting. For two teams that ended up in the first round, I could definitely see both of these players going very, very deep. Yeah, they're just solid players with good teams. I think as far as team goes, I lean Robbie. I think that Excalibur, Primarina, and Kilowattrel is a great kind of trio. You have a lot of win conditions just in those three. I think J-Dog does have some advantages, though. Kyurem should do pretty good. I don't know. It's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because you're going to be good into Primarina. I don't even want to say good into. You have options to deal with it. You have Freeze Dry, but you are going to take a lot of damage from the Gleams and the Moonblasts. It's kind of the same thing with Excalibur. Like, you could be good there because you have Dragon, but also you could lose because it's a Dragon type. So it's going to be volatile. I think it's going to be a fast-paced match. It's going to be great to watch. Robbie's got some advantages, though, right? He's got pretty good speed control in Kilowattrel. And if Kyurem decides to go Scarf, he can fake it out with Salazzle. Treads should be good into Kyurem as well. Landorus might be the key here. It obviously sucks into Primarina. But I think it'll be good here. Mabostiff is good for the Intimidate. I'm kind of going back and forth on this. They've both got so many pathways to winning. Because Azumarill looks good too. Robbie doesn't have a grass type, and his electric type is Kilowattrel, which is very frail. So yeah, I don't know. It's tough. I think I'm gonna go J-Dog. I think I'm gonna pick J-Dog just because when all else fails, you pick the player that's historically had more success, and J-Dog, throughout most of SBL's history, is one of the best players that there is. So, have to go with J-Dog, unfortunately, because I think Robbie could also do really well. So, that one's kind of a toss-up for me. Could go either way, but I have to pick somebody, so I'm going to go with Joe. All right, now we've got Yuliko versus Satan. So, in terms of matchup, I think Satan has some of the better options to kind of limit Urshifu. You've got speed control with the Prankster Tailwind. You've got weather control with the Prankster Sunny Day. So yeah, you can kind of limit Urshifu in those ways. And Ogerpon shouldn't have any matchups that are too bad. I mean, it's weak to flying from Jugulus, but it should do pretty good into Urshifu, considering it's faster, and unless it Terras, it takes neutral damage and should be able to hit back super effectively. Shocks should be really good into Urshifu. Crocodile should be good in Urshifu. So Satan's team is kind of built to counter Urshifu. Now the question is, how's Yuliko going to fight back? So yeah, like we said, Jugulus should be good into Ogerpon. Maybe if you run like an offensive Jugulus, you can force it to Terra, which makes life a lot easier for Urshifu. You're going to have to cycle Raichu a lot to get your Fake Outs and your Lightning Rod to help out against Shocks, Sandy Shocks. Zarina can stop certain things from Illumis. Unfortunately, it can't stop Sunny Day or Tailwind. And let's see, Typhlosion. I don't know. Glamora. Like, honestly, I think the matchup's good for Satan. But guess what? I'm still picking Yuliko. Just because, I mean, how shocking would it be for a first-time player, this is Satan's first season, to beat the reigning champion and heavy favorite to win? I don't know. It's possible. It's totally possible. I mean, as we've talked about, the matchup seems kind of hard for Yuliko. But at the same time, Yuliko's probably going to see something that I don't see. I consider myself a good prepper, team builder, however you want to say it. But I think most people in the league would tell you Yulico's probably the best team builder in the league, just because he does such absurd levels of information gathering. So, if I'm forced to pick, I'm more inclined to say that he'll find a way through the tough matchup as compared to saying that Satan's going to win based off of the matchup, despite inexperience. And I don't know, maybe he's played a lot of VGC. It's totally possible. I mean, he's good. I've watched him play. He's good, but, Ogerpon is a good Pokemon. So, anyway. Next, we have Shell Shock versus Cyber. I believe they played this season, and I believe Cyber actually won. I think it was pretty late into the season. Let's check. Shell Shock. So they played week 10, and Shell Shock lost 2-1. And it looks like Arch was just kind of struggling to get some offense going. Let's see what happened. Ooh, the big paralysis. Oh, dang, what? What? How? Oh, nasty plot. Okay. All right, so basically I just watched Game 3, and it just kind of looks like Shell Shock struggled to take out Moltres before it was able to get set up. And Moltres, when it's set up, is very scary. I just watched Moltres take out an Assault Vest Archaludon from like 90%. So, all right. So yeah, that kind of brings up an interesting question. I mean, historically, Cyber's been the slightly better player. Two-time champion, right? Yeah, two-time champion. He's got a really strong team. One of the only teams, in my opinion, that rivals Shell Shocks in terms of just strength. So yeah, that kind of begs an interesting question. How's this going to go when they play again? If they play again. So I think Shell Shock's going to try much harder to deal with Moltres before it's able to get going. Now that I think about it, Cyber has some good options of dealing with Arch. I mean, Fake Out from Rillaboom is good. And, Rillaboom's obviously super bulky. And then you've got Close Combat on Sneasler to force it to Terra. You can Nuzzle it. You can follow me, the Electro Shots with Pachirisu. Iron Moth should threaten it at least a little bit. So yeah, this is tough for Shell Shock, I think. I didn't think it was about 5 minutes ago, but I've watched how that went, and yeah, that's a little concerning, especially because I was talking about how much I think Shell Shock's a favorite to win this season. So yeah, just like the J-Dog Robbie matchup, I think this one's a little bit of a toss-up, and a little similar to the Satan Yuliko matchup as well, just because that could definitely go either way. So this is the point we're at with the playoffs. Is the league's gotten so good that you're not really certain who's going to win. Especially in a case like this, where this season Shell Shock's been better, but historically Cyber's been better, and they're both really good, and they both have really good squads. I think I'm going to pick Shell Shock, just because I felt pretty much all season that Shell Shock is one of the favorites to win. And I haven't really felt that way about Cyber since early on in the season. I felt early on that he was definitely a contender because of how strong his team is, but he's proven, or I guess other people have proven throughout the season, that his team is very beatable. He went like 6-4, so it was 7-3. I apologize. I'm downplaying Cyber's season. I feel bad about that. He had a great season and he's got a great team, but I'm going to pick Shell Shock. Next would be Damage versus Knave. And I think this is probably the easiest round 2 to predict. Damage, maybe the best player in SBL history. Not on some glazing shit, but I think statistically that's pretty backed up. And Knave, first season in the league, had a great season, had some great wins, but how are they going to deal with Hoopa? That's kind of the big question you have to ask every time you're up against damage is how on earth are you going to handle Hoopa? And I don't think Knave has a lot of options. Sylveon could be good. But other than that, I mean, I guess King Gambit has a pretty good defensive type combination there. But I don't know. I just think, obviously, it's got Terra. So it's going to be able to abuse that. It hits way too hard. I guess maybe Volcarona could be a good defensive option into Hoopa, but I don't know. I'm just going to kind of trust my gut on this one and say that damage has got it. And then the last round 2 matchup is going to be Maddie and J-Dog. So I thought Maddie was very bold for picking this match because he could have gone with Cyber versus AJ. Now, granted, in a vacuum, I think Cyber's probably scarier than Robbie or J-Dog. But in terms of matchup, I think J-Dog does so well into Maddie. Kyurem, let's just look at Kyurem into Maddie's team. Okay, Kyurem resists both of Ogerpon's stabs and obliterates it with Freeze Dry. Pheasantipity probably does fine into Kyurem, but Kyurem gets Earth Power. Same thing with Arcanine. It's not that scared of it, but it is weak to Earth Power. It's not resisting Dragon. Registeel does well into Kyurem, but it's not very good into Landorus or Magmortar or Gengar. It's really bad into most of the team other than Kyurem, and even then Kyurem can run a Terra Ghost. Ambipom's fine into Kyurem, but like he doesn't have any option that's that good into Kyurem, and Kyurem has so many good matchups here. So I think if J-Dog wins, Maddie's gonna be under a lot of stress to deal with Kyurem properly. Now that said, Maddie's team is super good, and I think if Robbie wins, he'll probably win that because they've played before and Maddie won. Granted, Robbie's team was super different all the way back in week 1. He still had Alolan Ninetales, and now he has Primarina instead. But I think in the universe where J-Dog beats Robbie, I have to take J-Dog purely because of how good Kyurem is into Ogerpon. Alright, that gives us a semifinals of Yuliko versus Shellshock and Damage versus J-Dog. So, both of these matchups have happened already this season. Yuliko Shellshock was like week 1, and Yuliko won. And Damage J-Dog was midway through the season, and that was Damage's only loss this season, was J-Dog. So, Yuliko Shellshock, I think matchup-wise, Shellshock's team is pretty good. Obviously, Urshifu is scary because you're probably going to be playing in rain. So those Surging Strikes are going to be hitting extra hard. And then, of course, you've got the Fighting types hit into Archaludon. But if Archaludon has a good Terra, and it picks up some stamina boosts, we might be in a good spot if we're Shellshock. And of course, Pelipper matches up fairly good into Urshifu. I assume Pelipper can live a rain-boosted Surging Strikes. It's totally possible that it doesn't, actually. But I just don't know if Yuliko's team has the defensive synergy to handle how overwhelming Shellshock's team can be at times. Like I said last time I was talking about Yuliko, like he is going to figure out something. But I think overall, I kind of favor Shellshock in the matchup. Yuliko doesn't have really anything to deal with Overquill that quickly. Intimidate's super strong against Urshifu. You know, you kind of assume that it's not going to be holding the Clear Amulet. It could be, but it kind of needs something to boost its speed or, you know, give it a little extra damage. So yeah, I'm going to take Shellshock. They did play week 1 and Shellshock lost. But I think I'm going to lean Shellshock, which is crazy because, you know, Yuliko in my mind, has to be like the favorite, but it's gonna be tough. He's got multiple really hard matchups to deal with, so I'm gonna take Shell Shock to make it to the finals. And then you got Damage versus J-Dog. Now J-Dog won in the regular season, which is kind of wild to me. It was 3 games. He did pretty much get swept game 2, though. And the games that he won were a little closer. How is J-Dog going to deal with Hoopa is the question. I think Azumarill matches up pretty well into Hoopa. Although it can just run like Sludge Bomb, Terra, Poison. Or maybe he runs Terra Blast, I don't remember. But like, he doesn't have anything that's particularly bad into Hoopa. And he's got a lot of fast, not fast physical attackers, but Azumarill has priority and Landorus is pretty quick. On the flip side, you almost look at it the other way and say, well, Hoopa doesn't have any bad matchups. So how is Hoopa going to be stopped? Yeah, and Tornadus is pretty good. Kyurem might go off. Yeah, I don't know. Would it be insane to say both of my championships favorites don't make it to the championship? Yeah, I think it would. I'm going to go ahead and take Damage, though. You know, I've just listed off a bunch of reasons why the matchup is fairly good for J-Dog, but I think Damage is kind of in too strong. At the same time, like, there isn't really anything too bad about the matchup for Damage, so he can kind of just do his thing, hopefully. And, you know, obviously, he's had an incredible season. Only loss was to J-Dog, which is why this is a little difficult. But I think finals is going to be Shell Shock versus Damage. So that presents us with a pretty interesting scenario where, assuming it is Shell Shock, you're going to have either a new champion in Shell Shock or you're going to have the first 3-time champion in Damage. Or in the universe where Yuliko beats Shell Shock, you're looking at Yuliko being the first back-to-back champion and one of only 3 2-time champions, or Damage being a 3-time champion. So as far as quote-unquote lore goes, this is a very consequential season, assuming that some assortment of those 3 ends up this far into the playoffs. But if it's Shell Shock versus Damage, who do I think is going to win? This may surprise those of you watching, but I think in my official predictions bracket and video, I'm going to pick Shell Shock to win the championship. I think in a vacuum, Yuliko and Damage are probably more likely, but Shell Shock has some good matchups against them. Now, obviously, this would be a pretty tough run. You know, playing Cyber, Yuliko, and Damage would be an insane run. But I think this is the team that can do it. You know, we've seen in the last handful of seasons that the championship team is usually a really bulky Pokemon with a great supporting cast. And, you know, we've seen that with Annihilate, and we've seen it with Raging Bolt. And even the season where Annihilate won, the runner-up was Archaludon. So I think we're going to see that again. And Damage kind of has that with Hoopa, but it's not quite the same. Yuliko doesn't really have that. Urshifu is not that same archetype where it just bulks up. But I think this is Archaludon's season. I think the team that he built is really good. Like, it's absurd when you compare it to Damage and Yuliko's teams. They are a little more balanced, I guess. Like, they're Pokemon teams with really good Pokemon on them, whereas Shell Shock's is like really cohesive and it doesn't have any super obvious weaknesses. Arch is such a nuisance. Overquill, hard to deal with. And everything else has a way to win the game, pretty much. Like, Ludicolo and Pelipper and Slitherwing are not going to be your strongest Pokemon, but you have to pick between those Pokemon or trying to deal with Archaludon, and it's just not a very good 50-50, because regardless of what you take out, the other thing is going to hurt. So yeah, this video ended up being super long. Hopefully that's not a problem. If you're like me, you'll watch it on 2x speed. And yeah, that's my playoff prediction. So my prediction officially is your cup winner is going to be myself or Cam or Dustin. And your champion is going to be Shell Shock. And then my backup picks are Yuliko and Damage. But screw the backup picks. We're going all in. We're saying Shell Shock and Sagat are your champions this season. All right, so yeah, I'll be playing next week against either Mao or Wiki. And so yeah, that's when my next video will drop. Other than that, I think I don't have too much to say, other than thank you for watching, and I hope y'all enjoyed the video.